Pilate therefore said to him, "Are you a king then?" And Jesus answered him, "You say rightly that I am a king. For this cause I was born, and for this cause I have come into the world, that I should bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" Welcome to What is Truth. I'm Payton. Welcome to What is Truth, or WIT, as they may be calling it. That's short for What is Truth, and we'll be getting into what exactly that is. I am the host, Payton Arnett. Just to give you a little bit of background about me, I am right now a college student, and my passion is in Christian apologetics. This is a show that will primarily be focused on philosophy, theology, Christian apologetics, why we believe what we believe as Christians, and hopefully a show that can also equally be appealing to unbelievers. I have always been a Christian. I've been raised my whole life as a Christian, but that does not mean that that's why I'm a Christian. As cold case homicide detective Warner Wallace says, I'm not a Christian because I was raised that way or because it satisfies some need or accomplishes some goal. I'm simply a Christian because it's evidentially true. That's kind of what I consider for myself as well. Now, he wasn't raised a Christian. I was. I was baptized into the Seventh-day Adventist Church. I just figured I'll throw that out there. When I was in about 7th grade, I believe, and that was a little while ago now, and though I always believed God existed, I always believed Jesus died for my sins, I grew up in private Christian school, that does not mean that it was always real to me personally. Something that I've noticed in our spiritual walks is that we can go for a long time being what Jesus might refer to as lukewarm. Or we know what we believe, we don't really know why we believe it, we were just kind of raised that way. What I found is, when you live that way, and then you're confronted with a challenge, you often stumble. Because if you don't have firm foundation in what you believe, you don't know why you believe it, and when someone asks you a question like, if God, why evil, which we'll get into in this episode, you don't really know what to say. 1 Peter 3:15 calls us to always be prepared to give an answer for the hope that we have in Jesus. That is why apologetics matters. And you might be wondering, what is apologetics? I don't know exactly who will be watching this. Some of you may be watching this because you already know apologetics. Some may be watching this just because I told you to watch it or something like that. But apologetics comes from the Greek word apologia, which means to defend. Now, some actually have a problem with Christian apologetics. They say that Christian apologetics is not a good idea because the Christian faith is inherently something that is built on faith. But when they say faith, they mean blind faith. I don't believe that we as Christians are called that blind faith. That is one of the missions of this show. I really don't think we're called that blind faith, and I think that that's biblical. When the Bible talks about faith, it means trust based on something, not trust based in lack of something or in lack of evidence. There are many examples of Jesus being an evidentialist. His apostles were evidentialists. Just to throw out a few of them, for example, when the apostle Paul is confronted with Christ on the road to Damascus, his evidence on what he's seen and what he's heard convinces him to convert and to leave everything else behind and become a Christian, even though he had just been persecuting the Christian church. In the same way, Jesus was an evidentialist, because he told people to believe in him based on the signs he was performing. Not based off faith, not based off blind faith, but based off the signs he was performing. So this show, its primary focus is to get a conversation going about the topic of truth. We are to pursue truth. The topic of truth is complicated in our culture today. It's not really very simple. There was a time when the word truth just simply meant what is the objective nature of the reality that we're in. Now it seems that truth is more complicated. Religion has been attacked for a long time. But in our world today, it's being attacked in a different way, in a way that really doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And that's the reason for shows like this. And this is certainly not the only show like this. I think that I have a unique format going here, but when it comes down to it, there are many other podcast shows that I can point you to, and I will point you to through the course of this show, about resources of understanding why you believe what you believe. Because the culture will tell you that you can have your truth and I can have my truth. The problem with this concept is, how do we know who's right? And there has to be a right and wrong. For example, we all agree that Adolf Hitler was wrong to do what he did in the Holocaust. But why was he wrong? Because under the worldview of the culture today, Adolf Hitler was not wrong. It was just his truth. It was just what he believed. He believed he was doing what was right, and he followed his heart. We obviously all know there's something wrong with that. Something not right about Adolf Hitler following his heart. So, should we follow our hearts? Well, the Bible says the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked above all things. Who could know it? So that leaves us in a tough spot because we as believers, we don't want to be the odd ones out, but at the same time, we're called to be not of this world. There are so many layers to what truth is in the world today. And in the next segment, we're going to get into the idea of truth and the story that this comes from. This show is based on John 18, and we'll read that in the next segment. But we're going to shorten that because saying what is truth every time could be a little exhausting. Instead, we're lazy in the culture today, right? So we're just going to say it's wit because we're to have wit when we're confronting challenges to the Christian faith. Do you know that the Bible actually says we ought to demolish arguments against the faith? I'll put that on the screen here. So we're going to be having wit in our defense of the Christian faith. There are many people I can point you to who have that wit. Frank Turek is one of them. And by the way, if you're watching this and you're interested in denominational conversation, that will happen on this show. However, I do believe that there are issues that are in-house. And I will point you to somebody like Frank Turek or J. Warner Wallace, who is not a Seventh-day Adventist like myself. That does not mean that their material is incorrect. Yeah, I disagree with some of the things they said. And if you look at my personal YouTube channel, you can find a video of me asking Frank Turek about questions in regards to different denominations of Christianity. That does not mean that his material is not valid. The book I'm currently reading is I Don't Have Enough Faith to Be an Atheist by Frank Turek. There are certainly great apologists out there in many different denominations of Christianity. Unfortunately, I think that Adventism may be lacking in this area, which is something hopefully we can bring to the table with this show. Another thing wonderful we're going to do on this show, not in this episode, but in future episodes, is we will have guests on this show where I will interview them and ask conversations. Right now, I'm the one talking. In the future, it'll be guests talking, at least probably one segment for a lot of episodes. Another thing about this show, it'll be weekly. Weekly content is a good way to do it. I find that I listen to weekly podcasts often as an Adventist on Sabbath because it's a great way to keep up with something once a week. The episodes will release once a week, and there will be about 3 segments to the show. This show, for example, will consist of this introduction segment with me talking. A second segment usually or could be an interview. This time, it will simply be me diving into John 18 with you and kind of going through where the title came from of the show. And finally, the final segment will consist of questions, common questions about the Christian faith. And there will certainly be opportunities to interact, and I will be answering any questions that I can that are submitted. You can follow this account on social media. You can also follow my personal media as well. They will be linked in the YouTube. This will be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, etc. And there will be many opportunities to interact and to ask that question, what is truth, along with me in this show. This show is certainly not about me. This show is about higher things, bigger things than you or I. This show is about pursuing truth. This show is about finding truth. And to give you personal take, of course, my personal belief is that truth is not an idea, it's a person. And that person is Jesus Christ. And I believe that in order to get to know Jesus Christ, you must first know Jesus of Nazareth. That is my pinned tweet on Twitter, literally. And the reason that is because in order to get to know Jesus Christ, you got to know Jesus of Nazareth. What do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that we ought to study the historical Jesus in order to get to know our personal Jesus. It's different for each and every one of us. It's not as simple as just saying everybody's got to study history and philosophy to be a Christian. I don't think that's true at all. What I do think, and I will say this is a universal claim, we all ought to know what we believe and why we believe it. Friends, there's going to be times in the world today. I'm on a college campus right now. There's certainly going to be times when you are confronted with challenges to your faith. People will ask you questions like, if God, why evil? They'll ask you, what is truth? Just like Pontius Pilate asked Jesus. And we ought to know how to defend what we believe and why we believe it. The reason I'm a Christian is because I think it's evidentially true. The reason I'm a Christian is because I have a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. But let me tell you, my personal relationship with Jesus Christ didn't get to where it is today until I looked into the evidence for Christianity. There's no doubt in my mind that Jesus Christ rose from the dead 2,000 years ago. And that is why this show exists, to pursue and answer those questions we may have about Jesus Christ. I'll end on this in this segment. C.S. Lewis said, Christianity, if false, is of no importance. But if it's true, it's of infinite importance. The only thing it cannot be is moderately important. It's either everything is or it's nothing. I'll see you in the next segment, which will be diving into John 18, which is where the title of the show comes from. Welcome to the obligatory part of every YouTube video where I simply ask you to like, comment, and subscribe if you appreciate what you saw. Thank you for making it to the end or skipping to this point in the video for whatever reason. And if you do think there's value in this ministry, I would really appreciate it if you shared this video, whether that's on social media, with a friend, however you'd like to do that. That is the best way to share this ministry. God bless.